Life and business can be easy, but us silly humans love getting in our own way. My name is Nico Rapclis, and I've had a wild journey. From releasing traumas that I held on to for decades, to playing college athletics, working with multi-million-dollar brands, having a spiritual awakening, and now coaching incredible humans navigate their inner and outer world. The Just Grow podcast is my outlet to share and help others with life and business. After investing north of $100,000 into my personal and professional development, the Woo plus Do formula is what has served me best. A healthy combination of mindset, energetics, consciousness, spirituality, self-healing, and discovery, matched with a high-level strategy, principles, focus, optimization, and accountability to help you be, do, and have everything that has been placed in your heart. This podcast is for the impact-driven entrepreneur that is finally ready to start thriving internally and externally. Welcome to Just Grow. Yo, what's happening, my friends? Welcome to the Just Grow podcast. So pumped to have you here. My name is Nico Rapclis. I am the host. And on this particular episode, we're going to be doing it with Natalie Hunter. She is incredible. We got to sit down, drink some cacao before we started, really settle in. We've gotten to know each other a little bit over the last year-ish, somewhere around there. We've been to the same wedding, but we really sat down and had a great conversation around energy and what does that really mean, and how do you really take your gifts that you have within you and apply them to the rest of the world and help people become the best versions of themselves. And it's kind of like this interesting phase that you can't really necessarily explain things with words, but you can feel them. And it's a really cool concept and a really cool conversation that we had. So you'll get to witness that here on the Just Grow podcast. Before we do jump in, I want to let you know about our next Just Grow podcast live event with Katie Kylene on November 16th. We're doing it here in sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. You can learn all about it at justgrowpodcast.com. Links are down in the show notes, the video description. But it's going to be an incredible event. Probably over 100 people that are going to be there. And we got some cool surprises, some different vendors, and like really exciting things. So you're not going to want to miss that. And without further ado, let's jump this interview with Natalie Hunter. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We had a full-length podcast before we filmed.
I blame the cacao.
Yeah, it's not our fault. It's that delicious chocolate.
We had cacao opening us up,
right,
to get us connected to each other.
Well, why don't you share just a little bit about the cacao? I think that people listening would be very intrigued with it.
I love cacao. I've been working with cacao for over 7 years now. It's a beautiful heart medicine, plant medicine. The brand I recommend is KAKAO Cacao, flycacao.com. It's the highest vibrational cacao out there, ceremonial grade, impeccably sourced, sustainably. It's just a beautiful medicine. And it's drinking chocolate, essentially. They take the whole cacao bean and roast it and bring it down into a drinking form. And it is literally a heart opener. So, there's a reason chocolate's a romantic food. Yeah. It's because it does literally work in the bloodstream to open up the blood vessels and expand your field. In more of the energetic sense, it also expands your heart space, your energy field, and it creates an openness inside, energetically, emotionally. And we call it a heart opener, and I use it in all of my work. So I do coaching, transformational experiences, retreats, and I call it my energetic anesthesia. Yeah. If I'm going to do any kind of energy like surgery or any work on anyone, I will lovingly bring in the medicine of cacao. It's a plant medicine. I will bring in the medicine of cacao so that they can start to intentionally tune into their heart space as well and open themselves to the transformational experiences. And then we can go in and do the work a little bit more easily. Just like, you like to expand the field before you try to extract something. The cacao helps to expand your field, your heart space, your consciousness, expands the field of love, and it creates deeper connection between people as well.
Yeah, it's like a spiritual lubricant.
We can call it that too, absolutely. Yeah. It's a really beautiful medicine and has a big presence in my everyday life and in my work too. So my husband and I, we sit with cacao at least a few times a week. Sometimes we have big conversations with it to connect us. We will use it sometimes just to repair or have a conversation to, kind of cap a big discussion, a closing, ceremony of sorts. We use it all kinds of different ways. And then I also use it in my personal meditation practice and in my coaching practice and my ceremonial work as well. So it just felt fitting.
Get it.
Yeah, flycacao.com. I'll put a discount code in the show notes that you can grab to get a discount off your first bag. It's awesome. I highly, highly recommend it, especially if you're a conscious being. There's a lot of different variations of the from where the cacao comes from, and then you can get it pure or you can get it sweetened. But it's a really beautiful medicine to incorporate if you're looking to deepen your spiritual work, deepen your connection to yourself, to your higher self, to God, and to another person.
Amen. Wow. Beautiful.
So I brought it for us to.
It's quite a treat
to have before we started recording.
Yeah, I've done it a few times, as I mentioned, but every time I've noticed it's pretty spectacular.
Aw, good.
So
I'm glad.
you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for being open.
I'd love for you to share even a little bit more about your story. Maybe take 5-10 minutes to run through your story a little bit, and we'll probably intertwine that into the rest of our conversation. But I'd also like for us to really dive deep into some of the concepts we were talking about, because there's just been some things that have been very transformative for me, and then I want you to really dive into the things throughout your journey, because you've been at this for 16 years, as you mentioned, which you have a lot of wisdom in you.
a lot of experience. Seeing life through a spiritual lens, definitely. Yeah. So yes, my awakening started in 2008, which is 16 years ago now. I got laid off and I started to search for meaning. It was my awakening process. I found my first teacher about 6-8 months after that, my first spiritual teacher, and I started very shortly after that working very intensely with my first teacher and just diving into myself. So I believe that the spiritual transformation process, the spiritual awakening process, always begins with a crisis of some sort. For me, it was a job loss. I got laid off and I had no idea who I was outside of that job yet. Eventually I figured it out, but I was working for this job, and then when the market crashed in 2008, nonprofits were getting hit hard. My nonprofit was downsizing and I was blindsided and I got laid off. So I started to search in myself. And my first several years with my first teacher were very deep into my own work, my own self, my own what I call my energetic patterns that were not serving me. And all humans have energetic patterns. They're either serving you or they're not serving you. And some people too would call this your limitations, your limiting beliefs. I believe it goes even deeper than just your beliefs. I believe that it's your field, your energy field, that is really creating these things. And you can call it your beliefs as well, but the mind is really, it's going to point to what's happening in your energy field. And there's these things happening in your frequency that are creating your existence on all levels. So I, with the help of a teacher, started to dive into my own experience, do my own deep excavation of what was working, what wasn't working. And I did that for years. Had no intention of ever teaching it. I had no intention of ever guiding more people in this process. I was doing my own speaking work. I had my own motivational speaking business. I spoke on stages all over the country for 10 years. And I was doing work to, motivate people. I did a lot of work for teens, and then I went into more of the corporate world. But eventually, my higher self started to get my attention, and I, through several different years and processes and other teachers, I found my next spiritual teacher a few years after the first teacher, 6 years after the first teacher. I started doing deep meditation. I started doing silent meditation retreats, doing some deep classes on consciousness, meditation, and I started to really, now from a cleaner space, I started to hear what was actually happening. connection-wise, between my higher self and God. Essentially, my connection to my team was clearer because I'd done the deep excavation work, because I'd done so much transformational experience within myself. I always say that when my gifts came online, my spiritual gifts, they came online very cleanly because I had done the work to shift my patterns before that, you know. Every human has what I call your human curriculum, which is the certain soul lessons you signed up to learn, the certain contracts you have in your experience, the people, the jobs, the calling on your life. It all makes up your own personal university, your own personal curriculum on this planet for this life for you, you know, with your name and your family, etc. And so the more you can go into your own curriculum and see, okay, what's, like, get honest, what's working, what's not working, clean it out, the easier it'll be to get on your path and then hear the guidance from there. So that's what happened. My gifts started to come online in 2016 and 2017. I thought I was going crazy. I started to hear things. These are my spiritual gifts coming online, my clairvoyance, my clairaudience, my clairsentience. Those are really the strongest gifts that I have, but I have all of them. And I remember I was in a silent meditation retreat, so I'd been meditating for hours, days on end at this point. And I started to hear some things and like voices.
Wow. And
I thought I was going crazy. And I literally said in my head, am I going crazy? And I heard clear as day a voice say, no, you're going sane.
Wow.
And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
You know, because you want to, you hear in the world, oh, you know, like through your experience that if you have voices, or at that point, you know, I heard if you have, you know, these kinds of things happening, you're crazy, you're detached from reality. But what was happening is I was becoming more and more grounded and more connected to God, to my team, and to self. So I really was becoming more sane. And I do believe that is the spiritual transformation process. It guides you to clarity. It guides you to sanity. It guides you to your connection to your higher self and essentially your path, which is the highest service. It's the greatest thing you can do in this life. And you are becoming, more sane, essentially. Because we feel like we're going crazy when things aren't in alignment, right? When they're not clear. So 2017, then my gifts really landed in. Had to get some support with that because I didn't know what was what. I was seeing things, my mediumship was online, I was hearing things. I was working with clients at that time, not fully in a coaching sense, but I was seeing clients every day. So I started to be able to practice my gifts with these clients. And I essentially got really good at my gifts over the next year and a half. So it wasn't until 2018 that I really started charging for my gifts, charging for readings, charging for coaching.
All that time you hadn't been charging?
No, I wanted to be really good at it. I felt like I needed to get an integrity, I knew I was still studying, I knew I was still learning. I wanted to make sure I was 100% confident that if somebody was going to exchange money for my services, that I was clean and clear and solid in my ability to deliver for them.
Wow.
So I went to coaching school as well in 2017 and finished in 2018, and then I came out and launched my training, my coaching business, my spiritual readings, etc. In 2018 officially, after being on the path for a long time. But I wanted to make sure I was steady and solid, because when you start working, and then I've still been learning, since then. But when you start to work in the energy field of another person, there's a lot of different factors that you need to take into consideration. And it's not just, oh, I'm reading this. It's, all the gifts are starting to be used, and you're able to see things, hear things, smell things, tap in on a deep level. And there's certain aspects of yourself energetically that need to be strengthened. I call it your spiritual windshield, so that you can go into someone else's field and lovingly work without getting blown over. So I had to learn those lessons the hard way as well. Shout out to my teachers over the years who really supported me in my ability to do readings, to channel in front of a crowd, to public speak with my channel wide open. It's been
Wow.
it's been a journey. It's been a journey.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Dang. So much goodness that we could dive into and all that. Well, one thing I was going to say, I don't think I've mentioned this to you, but one thing I've noticed with you is that you're very embodied, and you're very like, you have this emotional conviction to you.
Thank you.
And I think that's what makes you so powerful and such a great coach now. Like, just from what I can perceive, what you do with your clients. I don't sense too much doubt with you. You're just like very like, this is how it is. And you know what I draw from that story is like, yes, it was probably, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like probably was longer than what you expected.
Yeah,
Especially
always.
before you start charging.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I feel like that's an interesting part of the spiritual journey is like,
Yeah.
you're like, I feel like I'm so tapped in and I feel like I should be helping people and getting compensated for that. And for you to take all that time and not, must have been challenging. And I think, but also within that, you going through all those challenging periods of times and making it more, or not making it more, but it being that challenging has allowed you to have that type of emotional conviction and embodiment now because of it.
Yeah, thank you. I really saw it as time invested in building this new business. I did hundreds of hours of practice with my spiritual gifts, and then I did hundreds of hours of practice with coaching as well. I did this challenge it was actually in 2019 that I did this. This is a funny story. So I went to coaching school in 2017 and 18, and in coaching school I learned, I can't remember the name of the book, The Prosperous Coach. It was this technique from the Prosperous Coach. They were talking about ways to build your coaching business. And it was a technique from the Prosperous Coach where he recommended doing 100 free coaching sessions in 100 days. And just start telling people you're doing 100 sessions, and then start signing people up to coach with you for free to get the practice out in the world. And I remember hearing about it in the back of my mind. And this was after I'd already done years of practice on my spiritual gifts too. And I remember hearing about this and I was like, oh, that's an interesting technique. And then it was always in the back of my mind. And then I launched my coaching business, started doing my spiritual gifts in 2018. Going into 2019, I had a crazy experience where I lost my hearing. I was on a ski trip, and we were going like up and down the mountain on this ski trip, and I was battling a cold. And so my ears were popping and not popping and all these things. So then we fly home and we land, and you know how like when your head is really congested and you are like trying to pop your ears, but and you can't hear anything, but there's like pressure in your ears. We land, and I had this sensation where it was like I needed to pop my ears, but I couldn't, like the pressure wasn't building anymore. I just couldn't hear anything. And it was like this feeling of my head being in a bubble, and we're standing at baggage claim. My ears just wouldn't pop, and I couldn't hear anything. So we're standing at baggage claim after coming home from the ski trip, and I was like realizing we'd landed a long time ago. Like we landed like 30 minutes ago. We're waiting for our bags, and I'm like, my ears haven't popped. And I'm like starting to panic in this baggage claim moment in myself internally. I'm like, I can't hear anything. And I'm looking around, and it was like a scene from those movies where like there's like a big explosion and like everything starts to move in slow-mo, and you can't hear anything, but like you could see all the people moving around you. Like that started to happen to me. And I was like, I can't hear anything. And I'm like realizing like this is a panic moment in baggage claim, and the panic starts to well up in my body. I'm like, I'm gonna go to the doctor. I don't know what's happening. I can't hear anything. I can't hear anything. And then I heard clear as day a voice say, you'll get your hearing back when you decide to listen. And I was like, wow. And so it was my team getting my attention, my guides. They sometimes have to kick my butt. And I said to my boyfriend at the time, I was like, I can't hear anything right now, and I'm not supposed to. And he was like, okay. And, he understood. So I went home, made cacao. It was like, we actually had a morning flight, so we landed back at like 9 a.m. So fortunately, I didn't have anything that day. I had no calls, which was really unique. So I went home, made cacao, and I sat my tush down on the floor and I listened for the next 9 hours. I was like writing down, getting guidance. Like I had a pretty strong meditation practice already at that point, but I was not listening to some specific guidance that I was getting. And during that period, I heard, you need to do 100 free calls. You need to do these 100 free calls. You don't know why yet, but you need to. And I was like, okay. So I listened, and I was scared, and I like put out a little call a couple of weeks later, like doing 100 free coaching sessions. And what that did was actually spark my international reach in my career. So they caught on like wildfire. This was, again, beginning of 2019 at this point, like March 2019 when I launched it. And I just put out a call. I was like, if you're a world changer, if you've got a bright light, if you're here for bigger things and you don't know why, I'm offering an hour of free coaching. You'll get 3 steps to help you on your journey. You'll get an energy read. You'll get some free coaching. Can you help me? Tell people. It caught on like wildfire. People told people, told people, told people. The next thing you know, I have clients coming in from all ends of the earth. And it really started my international like world changer movement. And that was why my team, and my hearing came back, by the way, after the end of that day. That night, once I received the guidance and I was like, okay, I committed to doing it, that was when my hearing came back, like my ears popped. And I was like,
started listening.
When I listened. So then I did my challenge. I started my challenge. And the reason I bring that up, people said I was crazy. Like I already had corporate coaching contracts. I was already like full client base wise. I didn't need to do these free calls, but I was receiving the guidance to do it. And so I did it, and people were like, you're insane. Like, why would you coach for free when you have paid clients as well? And I said, I'm just listening to the guidance. And it ended up being very similar to when my spiritual gifts came online and I did all those free hours as well. And I looked at it, and the reason I bring it up too is because it was very similar, and I looked at both of those processes like I was building a business. And I said, if I was building a brick and mortar business, building a storefront, I would be spending more than 100 hours setting it up, preparing the business, like putting the shelves up, marketing. Like I'd be spending more than 100 hours getting my name out there, getting good at my storefront. So why not spend 100 hours getting good at coaching? Why not spend the time and energy for a year and a half to get clear on my gifts, to get really strong in those muscles, the clairs, your clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience, my mediumship, like all your clair gifts are muscles. And so, being in the gym, strengthening those for a year and a half before I went out into the world with them was just what I saw as preparation. I saw it as building. It didn't seem challenging to me that I wasn't charging for it. And then when I made my way through those 100 calls too, it was the same thing. It was like, this is fun. This is building. This is, putting my energy toward getting to know this community. And it ended up, I was just listening to the guidance, but it ended up being like one of my favorite things I've done in my career.
Wow.
People still reference it. They still talk about the world changer calls. That's what we dubbed them, the world changer calls. And then, I was able to like start that movement and really connect with those beautiful souls right before 2020. And then support them all through, the craziness of 2020 and helping them stand in their light at that time. So I had a community and coaching and all the things from there.
It's beautiful. I mean, like the thing that just continues to solidify and reminds me, coming back to that whole concept of continuing to get reminders, is the whole concept of just experience. Like, I think we live in this culture where, and I fall to this consistently as well. Less nowadays, but especially earlier on in my journey, is like I wanted like the quick fix, And it's like, I think a lot of people will not go through that type of journey where it's like do 100 calls, especially when you start having clients, and then you start feeling good about yourself, and you're like, well, I'm a coach and I charge, and my time is valuable. Right. And I think it's just extremely valuable to continue to get experience, because that's like,
and stay humble.
I'm not even, stay humble, of course. And it's like, you're just getting so much perspective too. And I feel like, with certain clients, especially if they're like dream ideal clients, like it's actually a real blessing to work with them too, to coach them, because you're actually learning a lot by coaching them. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I think that this life is going to give us so many opportunities, and you have to discern like what is the opportunity for you, what's the right thing for you. But I feel like if you're attracting that opportunity, you're feeling called to do this thing, it's not because you're better than it, you know, you're not better than that. You're being called to this experience, you're being called to this perspective for reasons that you can't see right now. And that was exactly the message for me. It was like, put your head down, stay focused, and it's going to make you better in ways that you can't see right now. And I talk about this too with regard to energy and shifting your energy on the planet. Like, you know, energy, I always say energy can shift in a moment. Yes. Like your consciousness can shift in a second. Yeah. But it takes time to bring it down through your physical body. The physical aspects are always the last part to shift.
Exactly.
Your physical body is the last part to represent the energetic shift. Yeah. Right? So it's going to take time. And it's always going to take longer than you want it to here on this earth plane, because the earth is extremely, the dense frequencies here on the planet, the earth is extremely dense in a lot of ways. And so, you know, your mind can perceive it, you can visualize it, you can get the guidance and then start to take the action, but it's going to take some time for it to ripple into the world and be sustainable. You know, you can bring the quick fixes down really fast, but if you're building something sustainable, you have to acknowledge it's going to take time. Yeah. And that is what is going to essentially make you stronger so that you can stand the test of time as well.
Yes. I think something I've said a lot that's really come to me is that we are living in a delayed reaction. Physically, we are living in a delayed reaction. Yeah. Have you heard this, that like the physical reality is like 0.03% of the mental plane, or the electromagnetic field?
I haven't heard the numbers. I haven't heard that percentage number, but yes, I have heard that the physical plane is only part of what actually is in existence beyond this field. But it's the same as, like, you know, the galaxies too. Right. Like Earth is a very small portion of what is happening in the greater universe.
Right.
And this is a very unique experience here on Earth, which is why our souls come here, which is why our higher selves are like, let's go to Earth, baby. We're like gonna come here and have a really gnarly and interesting experience, and play within this illusion of separation here on the Earth, and play within these physicalities as an energetic being, and also come within the limitations of the human body. You know, we bring our light down into this body, we have to deal suddenly with the nervous system, the forgetfulness, the fog of coming into Earth. We have to deal with the brain, we have to deal with other people, you know, you have to deal with the constructs of this earth plane, like money and time. You know, it's a game.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting game. And sometimes we question as spiritual beings, like, what the heck am I doing here? Yeah. Why did I decide to come here again? But when you tap back into the bigness and the reality of why your soul is here having these experiences, you remember, like, this is pretty cool. like this is wild, and this is just a fraction of what actually is. But you have to bless the brain that is narrowing things for you so you can function here on Earth. That's why the body and brain exist.
So much yes in that. Just yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild, because it's like you explain all these things, and as you get more tapped in energetically, you understand it. But early on the journey, and especially the people that are more focused on the physical plane, they're just like, what are you even talking about? But like once you start like realizing and understand it, and then you take that perspective, whether that is the exact percentage or not, it's a very small percentage. And so when people are saying like you're being delusional, it's like, well, who's actually being delusional? If the physical reality is, let's just say that is truth, it's 0.03%, and we're choosing to believe in the fact that like everything is created, and you're telling me only what we're seeing right now, and that's 0.03 of what exists, like who's actually being delusional?
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true.
I heard that recently, and I was like, wow, that's quite a perspective shift.
And it's amazing to see the humans and humans wake up more and consciousness rise on the planet, You know, we talked about this before we hit record. We talked about the different waves of consciousness on the earth plane, and what's happening right now are more and more people are waking up to what I call truth, capital T, truth. So everyone has their own lowercase t truths, which is like, what's true for me? What's true for me is I am this, I live here, I am, you know, whatever profession. Like, it's true for you. And then there's capital T, truth. Capital T, truth, universal truth, you know, who you truly are underneath this human body, you know, what is actually happening here on earth. And the more and more people that tune into this capital T truth, I think the more widespread these discussions will become, and this, you know, delusion, for lack of a better term, will become a little bit more widely known. But then there's always the invitation to come back into your body, you know, and that's, again, part of this game. And humble yourself, you know, this is, and do the hard work. You know, I channeled this down, and I actually just heard the clip again the other day. I found the clip. I was talking about floating and trusting that the water of the ocean will hold you, but also doing the work to paddle to where you want to be, to create what you want to create. It's the balance of this earth plane. Yes, you are surrendering to higher truth. You're surrendering to your possibilities, your visions, to what is your calling. And you're also putting your feet down, you're putting your head down, you're doing the work, you're doing the 100 calls, you're humbling yourself to the timelines, and you're staying focused as much as you can. I think it's an interesting concept in this crazy coaching industry right now. It's an unregulated industry, so people don't have to have a certification. They don't have to have any formal training on how to hold space or how to help guide someone through the transformational process. I'm very tuned into it because I had a coach training for several years where I would train coaches on the spiritual process and how to hold space for transformation in the coaching world. And so I've been studying this interesting industry and how people are, you know, having one experience, their own transformation, and going, okay, I'm a coach now. I'm going to guide people through. And I'm not discounting their experience. I'm not discounting what they've been through. At the same time, I'm going, but there's also the science of transformation too. Not everyone's transformation is going to look like yours. Not everyone's transformation is going to look like mine. The nuances are going to be different, but the overarching science of transformation is universal here on the earth plane with your human body. Are you working with that? You know, are you seeing things through that lens rather than like, it's going to look like this, and I'm going to, here's my quick fix, and here's my profession, and I want to, you know, I'm going to help people with just this. It's about broadening your scope, staying humble, and going, I'm going to put in the hours to understand there's way more happening here than my brain is even aware of at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great point. Like, coming back to the whole concept of experience, like you figure out all those little nuances within the experience. Because when you do one coaching call and you call yourself a coach, and again, like, no shade on that,
right,
because you certainly can help people that are earlier on in their journey. So it's like, I think that's something I don't agree with, like people throwing shade at other coaches and whatnot. Like we're all just here helping each other.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, why? And you're certainly not going to have every single client in the world. Like, why couldn't somebody that's earlier on the journey just help someone that's a few steps behind them?
Absolutely.
Right?
No, it's so important. It's so important. And this is what we were talking about too, is everybody tapping into their own wisdom and owning that and offering that too. I was just saying that there's the nuance too of like putting your head down and staying focused on the big goal too, without always just needing the quick fixes of this is what I am and this is how I'm doing it immediately, getting paid for this. I think there's a balance of both, but I do know that the world is changing and shifting, especially in the consciousness realm, from this person has all the answers. I'm going to sit at the feet of the guru. I'm going to sit at the feet of the person who's been there and understands everything. It's now shifting to, we're all sitting in a circle. You have your wisdom. You have your truth. And it's totally fine. I have my truth. Everybody's got their perspective. And then you choose to pay someone for that perspective. Absolutely. Yeah. It's important, and it's a beautiful microcosm of the entrepreneurial journey as well, and the entrepreneurial industry and spirit. And it's just a matter of what aligns for you at a given time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't want that to be perceived as me throwing shade at the coaching
No,
industry.
I know you're not.
I've just been studying it for so long, and I think it's a fascinating world.
Yeah, it really is.
And it's beautiful. I'm a part of it. I'm not throwing shade on this industry. I'm saying this is an interesting place we're in. The whole world is interesting.
It's a wild place.
The earth is interesting, but I'm a part of that too.
Life be lifing, I'd love to talk a little bit about manifestation and your perspective of it, and how this applies to what we term as the woo and the do. And I know that we kind of talked a little bit that before we hit record. But it's like, I've heard two things that are really resonant with me for manifestation, and I think there's different levels of it, right?
Yeah.
And one that I heard that I like a lot is like, it's talking about this more of the mental plane, the spiritual plane, the energetic plane, and how big that is, and then the physical plane is so much smaller, right? And so the way I've heard it before is like manifestation is taking the invisible, turning it into the visible. But one that I even like further, and I think this truly explains and embodies it even more, is that manifestation is the internal shift to the degree where you are not emotionally reactive to the changes on the physical plane.
Okay. Manifestation, say the last part again. Manifestation is?
The internal shift to not be emotionally reactive on if something is coming physical or not.
The term I would put on that too is evolvement and enlightenment. That's an enlightened state, is not being attached to things that are happening. And I think from that enlightened state, you then create with your awareness, with your energetic field. I don't use the word manifestation a lot in my teachings, because I think it denotes this, like we talked about, it denotes this thing that is going to just appear because you visualized it, where it does become reality because you visualize it, and because you work toward it, and because you said, I want to create that. But I love the word creation. So I say the word, like, what are you creating? What are your creations? What are you desiring to create? Because it helps connect you back to your creator sense. It helps connect you to the creator, the divine creator, and the creator in you, to remind you you're creating your reality at all times. So I'm creating what it is that I'm experiencing in some way, shape, or form. Another term, yes, is manifestation. But I sometimes the word manifestation makes it sound like, oh, I'm just not responsible for it. It just appears. I just make it appear, when that's not the way things always work that's not the way things work on this earth plane. You actually are creating it in some way. And so I think a big component of that is not being attached, like you said, and being in acceptance of the information that is in front of you. Like, this is a reality that I want, or something that I don't want. And what is it teaching me in this moment as well? And that once I think you get to that point, you then are going to learn the lessons quickly, and then create what you actually want even faster from a state of non-attachment. I actually have a really cool story about this. It was May of 2017, and I was at like this, I think it was like a Wanderlust festival. It was like a big yoga festival, and it was over at, I think, the Talking Stick Fields.
Oh, cool.
It was like this huge event, and it was over this huge piece of land, and it had all of these like booths and a big stage, and they were doing all kinds of activities on the stage. They had speakers. It was this beautiful outdoor, like, one-day event. And I went there, and I was with a friend, and I was wearing these two rings. I was wearing one of them, the two signs, or the sign on one of the rings was an infinity symbol, and then I had this other ring on my hand too, that was this really beautiful, powerful stone that I bought for myself in Hawaii, this ring, this gold ring. Both of them are gold. I loved these rings. They were my rings. I went to the bathroom, and then I came out, and it was like this weird, like, hand sanitizer water station. So I took the rings off, put them I was wearing a sweatshirt, put them in the pocket of my sweatshirt, washed my hands, forgot to put the rings back on. Took off my sweatshirt at some point, while we were walking around looking at all the things, and I tied my sweatshirt around my waist. And then an hour or two later, looked down, realized I didn't have my rings on. And I went to check the pocket of my sweatshirt, which had been like around my waist. And of course, the pocket was empty. And I looked around at the entire field of grass that we had just been walking on. It was like a football field.
Yeah.
And I was like, they're gone. Like, my rings are gone. My absolute favorite rings are gone. And there were just all these booths. There were thousands of people. And I like just accepted it immediately. I looked around, felt like that hopeless feeling, and I just released. And I was like, oh my God, they're gone. And my friend looks at me, she's like, we gotta find him. Like, she looks and starts looking around, she starts panicking, and I was like, no. And then she's like, well, what are we gonna do? And this person was walking up on the stage to guide this meditation. And I pointed to the stage and I was like, we're gonna meditate. And she was like, okay. So like, we sit down and I have this really deep meditation. I was letting this guide me through, and then I was having my own experience with it. And in my meditation, I was letting go of the rings. I was saying goodbye to them. I was releasing them. I saw myself buying this one ring. It was this big, the first purchase I had made, like, out on my own. It was a very expensive ring that I bought for myself on Maui. I was like saying goodbye to it. It had represented, my connection to myself. I was letting go. I was trusting, and I just said goodbye. And I knew it was an advanced lesson in detachment for me. And I stood up from the meditation. I think it was like half an hour long, and I just like breathed. And my friend was like, let's try to find your rings. And I was like, they are gone. I'm okay. I trust. I said goodbye. I'm good to go. I'm not even kidding you. 30 seconds later, we hear over the loudspeaker, if anybody lost 2 gold rings, you can come to the information booth. If you can describe them to us, you can get them back. And my friend was like, oh my God, that's your rings. And here's how detached I was. In that moment, I was like, they might not be mine. I was like, maybe they're mine, maybe they're not. And she was like, are you kidding? And I was like, no, let's just go see. Let's go see if they're mine. Like, I was that detached because I was so embodied in that moment of, release and going, thank you for this experience, fully accepting it, and then, choosing to detach from them being in my reality anymore. You can guess where the story is going. Yeah. We got to the information booth, I described them, and they gave me my rings back. Yeah. But it was the fastest, manifestation and creation of my life. I wasn't panicked. I was completely detached. It was a powerful lesson in detachment from the physical and detaching from, what it is that we think we want. And then to your point, and what we talked about too before, it's acceptance, full acceptance of what's happening in your reality to then create what it is you actually want from there.
That's powerful. Because then that lines it in with like, I just heard that phrase of manifestation recently, and it was that internal shift where you were not emotionally dependent on the physical. Yeah. Right? And because the fact that it came in, you didn't care.
Yeah.
Which is the wildest thing. We get exactly what we want, but now we don't even care as much.
Yeah. You're not as connected to the physical, but I think it also speaks to like the meaning you put on things, and you detach from what you think it means. And that, I think, is how we manifest. That is how we create from your power. You're detaching from that thing giving you something that you don't have yourself. And when you tap into your full power, your full presence again, that you're whole and complete without that thing, then things come to you. They magnetize to you much more quickly.
Amen. We could talk for hours. We already have. But wow, this has been incredible. I'm so glad that we got to sit down, do the cacao, set some intentions, have the exclusive behind the scenes conversation, and then hop on for the podcast for a little bit.
This was fun.
One last thing I'll ask you, I think this is a really cool question I've been asking lately, is what would you love for people to have received from this conversation?
I would love for people to remember their own power, to create what it is they want, to get good at a skill, to activate their own fire and consciously create their own sparkle, their own brand, their own light into this world. And that's really what I help people do with my gifts. You know, people are like, oh, you're so gifted with your readings, etc. And I always say, I like using my gifts because they help my clients tap back into their connection with source. You know, so when I'm tapped into my gifts or I'm seeing something for my clients and they then tell me why I'm seeing that, I'm like, okay, wait, why am I seeing you holding a soccer ball? Then they explain, you know, they broke their ankle with the soccer ball as a kid. You know, they're then connecting to their team. So when I come into your field, I'm supporting you and your gift as well. And that's what makes people go, oh my gosh, I am looked after. Oh my gosh, I am powerful. Oh my gosh, my team has got me. Oh my gosh, I've got me. I'm reminding you of how powerful you are. And that I think is what I want to stand for on this earth, is reminding people of their light, shining the light so that people can remember that they have their light, that's who they are. And you then have the ability to transform yourself. You have the ability to bring your gifts to others. You have the ability to show up on this earth full and whole and complete. And I believe that if you're called to this industry, you're called to the personal development world, it's because that aspect is in you. And you're learning from people who are just maybe a little bit further ahead on the journey. That's it, like you said. Yeah. And they're here to give you pieces of wisdom that help you remember who you are too.
Yeah, I love that last part, is reminding you of who you are.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Like, we are all abundant and love and one and connected.
Yeah, and we're just...
So we forget that when we come to this earth plane.
And that's part of the game, you know, like you take the pill, you forget, you come into the fog of forgetfulness, and then you wake back up. But you've laid it all out for yourself, you know, and like Ram Dass says, we're all walking each other home, you know, we're all like linking arms and walking each other back to truth, capital T, truth. And if you're on this spiritual journey and you're feeling guided to help others, it's not just a calling, it's a responsibility.
Yeah.
So accepting that responsibility, doing your own work, staying humble, staying, you know, down, grounded through all the challenges and through the successes too, I think makes us even stronger.
Lots of yes in that one too. Where can people find you? What's the best place to connect with you?
Instagram, of course, is the ultimate business card. Love Natalie Hunter. That's going to be the fastest, easiest way to connect, to book a reading, to get cacao, to also hear about upcoming events, my podcast, etc.
Cool. We'll obviously put all those links in the show notes and everything, but thanks so much for being here. Thank you for just who you are and who you continue to show up as.
Thank you for who you are too.